Hello, welcome to our next Island Artists Gallery Zoom talk, and I'm really excited about this one. I'm hoping that all of you will enjoy it as well. There, just as a couple of business matters, our next talk that we have will be Cinnamon Dockham, and that one will be December 8th, and she's going to be showing us how to paint white animals with color and talking about polar bears. So that's next December 8th, and we hope everyone will join us for that one. And now I would like to turn it over to Andrew Toms, who is the executive director of the Sitka Conservation Society. And they are responsible for making this this happening that we have going tonight occur. So Andrew, you want to take it away and tell us a little bit about Phonograph Creek?
Yes, thanks, Pat. Thanks everybody for coming and welcome, and thanks to the Artists Co-op for putting on this great event and bringing us all together here. We've got a presentation that will start up, so I'll ask whoever's on the tech to get that started, and I'll introduce a little bit here with that.
Thanks for the patience. Just give me a second.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, great. Good things take time.
How's that, Andrew?
Great. I can't see it, but there it is. There it goes. Okay, so welcome. This is I think the first presentation out that we've done on some artists that were in residency here at the property we have at Phonograph Creek. So this project, I'll give you a little bit of a background on it. This is a project of the Living Wilderness Fund of the Sitka Conservation Society, and you can advance the slide. And then in this photo, this is a picture of the property in Phonograph Creek on Lisianski Inlet. As I said, this is a project of the Living Wilderness Fund. The Living Wilderness Fund is an endowment that was created to honor the founders of the Sitka Conservation Society and the work they did, principally Chuck and Alice Johnstone, and Jack and Sasha and Margaret Calvin. Next slide. Those folks back in 1967 started up the Sitka Conservation Society, and here's some pictures of them up in the West Chichagof area. This is a time when the pulp mills were slated to log 90-something% of the Tongass, and people in Sitka came together and said, we need to keep some part of the Tongass where logging doesn't happen. And they decided that they wanted to pursue wilderness designation for the West Chichagof area. Here's some photos of them in West Chichagof. Here in the upper left of the screen is Chuck Johnstone and Jack Calvin, and that's out by Dry Pass by Mirror Harbor near the hot springs in West Chichagof. And the big picture is them hiking across Chichagof Island someplace, and we haven't been able to find where that picture was taken yet. I think it's someplace in the Goulding Lakes. But what they did in the beginning was to take people up to West Chichagof on these two little pocket cruiser boats that they had and introduce them to the place, hope they could find inspiration in the place, and then that they would go back and advocate for its protection as wilderness. So the Living Wilderness Fund honors everything that they did as an endowment, and people have given money to that fund and helped build it up so that eventually we can hire a full-time person that is going to do wilderness advocacy to protect wilderness and protect Tongass and help us in our work. Next slide. One of the gifts that was made to that fund was the Phonograph Creek property. Can you advance the slide for me?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, there you go. So one of the gifts that was made to that fund is when Eric and Pam Beeler passed away, they left us their property that is in West Chichagof. Well, it's right on the outside of the West Chichagof area. So there's a map here, and let's see. I'm going to look at it. I can't control the pointer. So there you have Sitka in the lower right-hand corner. And north of us is Chichagof Island. And the West Chichagof Wilderness is outlined in red there. And then you can see Pelican down up at the north side of West Chichagof. So the Beeler property is about 15 miles southeast of Pelican on the Lysianski Inlet. And you can only get there by float plane or boat. By boat, it's out around Kaz Head and up through the entirety of West Chichagof. And by float plane, it's over Chichagof and Baranof Island through over a bunch of mountains and down into the fjord. And there's a picture of a float plane dropping us off there. And there's a picture of the property from the air. Next slide. So the Beelers lived here for over 20 years, and Pam and Eric were both really talented artists. And they built this property and pretty much created their own homestead there. Here's a picture of their barn where they kept horses and sheep and chickens and put up hay from the field every year. That barn is all made from wood that Eric and Pam pulled off the beaches on beach logs, milled up on the property, and made into lumber. And the shingles are all handmade by Eric and Pam. And, you know, I mean, they just lived a full Alaska homestead tradition, making their home with materials from the surrounding natural environment and trying to live a life with as small of a footprint as they could. You know, they made fences for their animals around the property out of the materials that were there. They built a barn that had a really nice wood shop to work in. Eric built boats with wood that he took from there. And it's just a really nice place that's kind of like a fairy tale cottage in the wilderness that just feels, you know, just like it grew up out of the place. Honestly, it's in a beautiful setting. And, you know, you could see the inspiration that they took from the place in building it. And of course, Eric and Pam made a lot of art there that was inspired from the place. Next slide. And here's Eric and Pam and some of their animals and the location. This is on the flats right out in front of their property. And there's Pam, and she matted up and framed all of Eric's work. And she did textiles and weaving and used the hair of their sheep and ponies to weave yarn and made really amazing clothes and textiles and tapestry. And Eric did all of his wood prints and his drawing and his painting and just created a huge body of work. So the gift that they made to us in leaving this property to the Sitka Conservation Society, of course, was tremendous. And by, you know, all kind of best management practice directives of nonprofits, the best thing we could have done was to sell the property and invest the money in the stock market and use the returns on that to fund our advocacy work. But when we saw the property and kind of felt their presence there, and really has a special power, the place. And, you know, we wanted to do something more with it than just to sell it. And you know, it's a perfect place for people to go to and experience the wilderness. And so what we're trying to do there is, you know, continue that legacy that the founders of SCS started of introducing people to the wilderness and helping them find inspiration to share it with others and to help us protect it, which is what Eric and Pam left it to us with the direction to do, is to take care of this place that they so loved and they got so much from, and keep it intact and help others, you know, discover how special it is. So we've done these artisan changemaker and residencies, and we were super happy this last summer to host Norm and Steve there. And I'll pass it over to them and let them talk about their experience there and the art they made, and learn about what it was like for them to be there and what they found in the place. Thanks.
Good. I guess I'm going to go first, and I'd like to start by thanking a few people. I'm sure Steve would agree, we both had a really incredible experience in our 9 days there. And it wouldn't have been possible without the help of Eric and Pam Beeler, who through their generosity and vision made that a place to go. The Conservation Society, of course, and Andrew, Heather Bauscher, and Leon Claire all were really instrumental in getting us up there, getting us settled, and getting us back. I'd also like to thank Jim Slater and his family. Jim is the adjacent neighbor to the Beeler property, and he was really helpful. For one thing, he had a long connection with Pam and Eric. And so being there in their former residence, it really was beneficial to get anecdotes and informations and stories about them. And then lastly, I'd like to thank Steve. I think we had a really incredible week, and you couldn't have found somebody who has a better work ethic and is willing to share and criticize and grow in those ways. So we got up there in what was an incredible day. We had 4 brilliant sunny days, sort of unheard of in Southeast. And not only was the place magical, but the weather for those first few days was incredible. We were dropped off, and with nobody else around, we had the opportunity to explore the area, the barns, the boat buildings, through their home, all of which was made it more poignant or more real. Both Steve and I knew Eric, not really well, but certainly acquaintances. And so this place is tied to him. And as we talk about our drawings, I think that'll will come out. But that was, excuse me. One of the first feelings I had upon getting there was what was their home is actually pretty much intact for what it was like when they were there. Their books are all there, their tools are all there. There was clothing hanging around, and I kept having this overriding feeling that they were going to come in any second and ask us what we were doing in their house. Of course they didn't, but it was incredible to, having known Eric, to walk through all of his buildings, see what he'd done, see how he lived. So I guess I'll just jump into my stuff. Did
Wait.
you want to add anything here?
I think the next slide is Eric's
Is
slide.
Eric's, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
No, I'm good. No, you carry on.
Okay. So for those of you who don't know Eric's works, this is just one example of what he did. He was a wood engraver, and a wood engraver is someone who carves on the end grain of wood. Now the end grain is very hard, very tight, and it allows you to get incredible detail. So and these works are not big. I think 5x7 is about the biggest I've ever seen.
About the size of the image on the screen there,
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
roughly.
So he was the master of living detail. His works are incredibly inviting. incredibly detailed and incredibly finely done. I was always I love detail in my own work, but it's a pale comparison to the kind of detail that Eric could bring to work. So this is the very first drawing that I did at Phonograph Creek, and I consider it a portrait of Eric. It's a little shore pine or lodgepole pine, I think, just growing out in front of the house, but it looked and felt like my image of Eric. So I call this Eric First Portrait. Good. This is another drawing. If you know my work at all, you know that mostly I draw trees, and it was like going to tree heaven because there were
I'm shocked to hear that you do a lot of trees. Do you do trees?
I think everybody knows that.
Okay.
So this was a combination of trees close to the house, actually on the way to the outhouse, and walked by it every day. And I loved the relationship between this big, solid, heavy tree and then the smaller one growing right next to it, right out of its veins. So this piece is called Mother and a Child. Okay. And this is my favorite piece from there. It was this is a group of spruce trees just adjacent to the Beeler house. It would be right on the right side of this, excuse me, the left side of this drawing. They were beautiful, solid, healthy trees. There was some redness in the color of them that I don't remember seeing in a lot of other spruce trees. And like I said, handsome, well done. And this was a drawing done early in the trip, and I'm a person who believes in signs, I think. So as I was sitting on a chair drawing these trees, I said, Eric, send me a sign that you're around. And about 3 minutes later, a little hummingbird flies up, hovers for a minute next to me, and leaves. And we did see other hummingbirds, but very, very few. So I'm taking that as a sign that Eric was around and approved of us being there. Okay.
That particular piece, those trees really loomed over the house too, didn't they?
Yeah. Yeah. That was the interesting thing about, an artist's house. You think of light and space, and this is a small, very compact house with trees on all sides. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty dark inside. I'm amazed that Eric could do the kind of detail he did in the light that they had. And I know late in his life he had vision trouble with I think from doing so much intricate, detailed work. This is a piece from late in our time at Phonograph Creek, and at this point, I'm beginning to see Eric and Pam as indicated by the little bits of what's the word?
Little driftwood.
Driftwood.
Flotsam.
Yeah.
You were enormous finding these little pieces of wood, these weather-beaten pieces of wood.
And above that, you'll see a form, and there was just one ball of bull kelp along this whole stretch of beach in front of the property. And it was right where the boat hull was. And
In fact, it got hung up on the hauling line all the
Thanks.
time. That's how we saw it.
so I thought because of its location, it was, first of all, it's a beautiful image. And then I put it in more of a vertical form than laying on the beach, but the name of this piece is Ascension. So the images in the bottom are them, the ascension and into the sky, and has something to do with their leaving. So this is and I think it's a white alder tree in the courtyard between, there's the house, the barn, a wood shop, and the gardens to the greenhouses and gardens to the left. And this little courtyard had two different groups of these trees, and they're absolutely gorgeous. And all I really captured was the center of them and the limbs beginning. They were covered with leaves, but the beauty for me was in the form of the trees. Okay. This is looking across Lisiansky Inlet to the mountains on the other side. Even though it was early August, you can see there was a fair amount of snow around. Beautiful mountains, like everything else in the area, incredible. And I called this piece Across the Great Divide, which has something to do also with their leaving. So I think, as probably Steve will mention, a part of this whole experience was trying to come to grips with Eric and Beeler and Pam's decision to leave. So that had a lot to do with this piece, and to think of moving into another space, into another part of the world. Okay. This is another piece from late in the experience, and I call it Ascension. Same thing. In fact, I call this Ascension too. So, but that whole thought of forms moving from the ground into the sky. Okay. This is the building on the property was, for me, just quintessentially Eric, that he did not like square, that I think every door in all of the buildings was rounded at the top. And this was an older gate, but you could see the workmanship that went into it. And
that's the gate to the long drop, actually.
Yeah.
All of the windows too, doors and windows, all were rounded. Almost like a church thing. I have no idea if he was raised in a Christian environment, but they have that feel to them.
They do.
The windows and the doors.
Good. And this is just a pen and ink study of the barn that was across from the house. Again, there's our arched doorway, arched windows, and his abstract pattern of shingling. Nothing square, nothing in line, everything pretty much random. Beautiful. Yeah. Somebody, Eric or Pam, I suppose, had placed an eagle skull on the limb of it was I think an apple tree. And it was beautiful in its quietness. And so I did that. I think Steve, you did, you have a piece from this whole thing. So
It was in the backyard, kind of looking into the backyard.
and here's a group of trees that the group of 3 that I showed you earlier is on the right-hand side of the house. This is on the left-hand side of the house. So the house would actually be immediately to the right side of these this little group of spruce trees, which started independently but grew together at that point. So biologically a really interesting look. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. This is one more piece from the Ascension series. It was amazing to me how powerful thinking about them, and we spent lots of time talking and pondering why and what for and the ramifications of it. So these are our studies at this point, but I think the images are worthwhile and worth exploring. This is another one of the alder trees in the courtyard. Just a study that the next time I do it, it'll hopefully look and feel like this, but be handled quite differently. And this is also a little piece from Leighton, our visit. And because I guess it was partly the time of year, there were lots of flowers, lots of vines, lots of growth around. It felt very rich to me, all of the plants and fauna that was there. So I just incorporated some invented images, which I think also are part of trying to tell the story of Pam and Eric. Good. And this is the one piece that I've done since I returned, and it's using those driftwood images that you maybe saw in the earlier pieces, and I've called this Down the Beach, and it has something to be that must have been a really intense experience to walk away from the cabin knowing that they were never going to come back, and somehow I want to use these images to convey what that might have felt like. Okay, now, Steve, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh boy, thank you. Thanks,
Here we
Norm. Hello. A lot of what I have thought has already been said, so I won't go over it again, but I had a different reaction perhaps to some of the things than Norm. Perhaps the place was, the darkness of the home affected me. The closed in quality, a lot of that has changed. You know, you have to remember we were there back in August, and the Conservation Society has done a lot of work up there since then. But I could see something of their lives there. Let's see before we go there, sorry, go back, thank you. Yeah, that's a little painting there of their house. And that's it. That's pretty much what I did on site. The painting changes in the next slide because I worked on it when I got back to town here, and I don't know, improved it or changed it. It gave it a little more solidity. All of these paintings I did outside with a little French easel, you know, and that's not really who I've been for the last 35 or 40 years. I work in a studio. And so these paintings being done outside, it was kind of an adventure for me. This was day 2, did a painting a day. So this was day 2. It was an experience for me. This is the boat shop. It's a beautiful place. You can see Eric's influence everywhere here. He built these boats. The light coming in the various windows. Over to the right of this image is a big workbench, and tons of tools around. A lot of them not usable. One of the most amazing things to me, thinking about Eric Beeler and Pam, is how much work he got done as an artist. In addition to doing all this, you know, I have trouble just getting the painting done and going down to CMART, you know, and that takes up a bit of my time. Well, somehow Eric built boats and built these doors and built these buildings, and they pretty amazing lifestyle. What's the next one there, please? Oh yeah, so here you're standing behind the barn. You can kind of see a bit of a trail there in the lower left part of this painting, and it goes over to Jim Slater's house. So Norman and I got an invite over there for a beer and a snarler, or you know, whatever was on the barbie. But you go down there, it's not that far away from their home. I was surprised at how close their neighbors were. That was a surprise to me. That's not a negative thing. It was a good thing. They're the best neighbors you could have. This little painting I did in black and white on site, and then I added color back here in town, and I thinned the trees out a bit. It's pretty dense back there behind that barn. So the location of the house, if you were standing where I was standing to do this little painting, the house is just there on the right, just out of the frame. Okay, Ellie, thank you. All right, there's that eagle skull that you saw earlier. I took it inside and put it on top of one of the stoves in the house, and put a little oil on the stove, you know, so I got a reflection out of it. And it's just a little study. Actually, you know, it's several times larger than life size, but it's just a study of the eagle skull. And the light in the house, you know, there's, for when we were there, at least there was very little light in there. Norm sat at the window and had enough light to work, but even back where this stove is, it was not a lot of light. I don't know how he did what he did there. Okay, so this is a chair that Eric built. It sits out in front of the house. So this was the first painting I did. And as Norm said, it was sunny. And you can see the light on this chair. It was blowing. It was blowing pretty good down the canal there, or down the channel. But the chair just had a sort of a life of its own. So I tried to convey that. It was more or less this color when I painted it, but when it did rain a few days later, its whole character changed. It sort of killed it. It was much better in the sun. This chair felt better being dry. So this is a portrait of Jim Slater, the neighbor, who he was really good to us and made us welcome. He come over when pretty much as soon as we got there. And so I wanted to do a painting of him, and we met his family several times, and he's a very interesting gentleman. And so I did this painting of him. It's about life size. It's a little larger. Let me think about that. It's about life size. So
He did bring us lots of filtered water.
He did. He brought filtered water because you got to filter the water there, and yeah, it was a bit shy on the water. So this is a stove in the house. This is the cook stove in the kitchen. My impression of their relationship is that this was Pam's spot. So I saw this as Pam's stove. I'm sure Eric could whip up a meal as good as anybody, but this felt like her to me. And this one's falling apart. It's might have been there for a few years. And you see how the image is kind of cut off. I mean, this is as far away from it as I could get. And it was pretty tight quarters, And so over in the top left, you see the light comes from the top left quadrant. Well, that's where Norm's sitting over there in the lights. And I'm over here in this fairly dark kitchen. So
I offered to share.
You never did offer to share. You didn't.
Okay, I didn't.
He got up early every morning so he could have the light. So anyway, this is the stove, and behind it, this stove shares a stack with a wood stove that we can't see in this painting, which is pretty clever. They share the same flue. So it's a big old cast iron stove. So the barn that you saw, Norman did a study of the barn from the outside, and I went inside the thing and was standing in there looking out, and this is what I saw. So that's what I painted. This is a little study. I ended up doing a larger painting of this when I got back to town. I have to tell you that for me, it felt, I could feel Pam in this place really strongly. That's all. I'm not sure why exactly. Eric's the guy that makes the beautiful art, and when you meet him, he's very sort of manic, and he's got a very strong personality and engaging, and Pam is in the background, if you like. But I think she owned the place, Anyway, this is what I saw looking out through the doors that Norman drew from the outside. So, and this is the painting I ended up doing here in town. It doesn't look like much on the screen, I know, but it's fairly large. I think I'm not sure. I think it's 4 by 3 feet, or 3 by 2. Yeah, anyway, it's fairly large. And it gave me the opportunity to expand the thought a little bit. I think it's a fairly strong painting if you get a chance to see it at the Island Artist Gallery. So the doors themselves, you see the shape, he repeats that shape all over the place. Even if the window is rectangular, he cuts the wood so that it shapes over the top of it, and you get the feeling that it's this shape. So yeah, go ahead, Ellie. This is a painting that I did here at home in my studio, and so this painting depicts the meadow in front of their house. One thing to know about this area is that it's unusual in that it has meadows, these open meadows that lead out to the ocean. That little structure you see down there with the red roof, that's a boat shed. And so the inlet is right there. Okay, you can't see it because hundreds or thousands of years of westerlies have built this big berm of gravel down there. So it kind of protects this meadow, if you like. That's a spruce tree sitting there. They're all the most symmetrical looking little spruce trees you'll ever see. So, and then you see that trail there. So this painting depicts Eric and Pam when they left. They left their home here and went to their other home down at, help
Green
me.
Top.
Thank you, Green Top. Poof. So that little trail is what you walk down to get to the beach there. And then they got on their skiff and took off. But I decided they didn't do that. In this painting here, they walk down, they get down to that beach, and then you see how that blue mist and goes up into the cloud. Well, that's where they went. That was an easier journey for them, and that's the one they took. So anyway, this is as you can see, a tall, skinny painting. Heck, I think it's a 36 by 15 or some such. So not a huge painting, but big enough to give you the idea. That looks like all the paintings we have.
That's all the painting.
And I think we can point out that this work will be on display here at the Islands Artist Gallery for the next 10 days.
Mhm.
So if you'd like to get a closer look at this, I think the opportunity is here to come take a longer, more careful look at it.
And we'll also, let me just interject because I can't stop myself, that we'll have an evening showing from
Friday.
5 to 7 this Friday.
Yep.
And if people want to come, it'll be a special show to be
Yeah,
able to
that'd be
see the
great.
artwork.
If you can make it, that'd be terrific. Sitka being Sitka, there's probably half a dozen things going on that night, but it's from 5 till 7.
Yeah.
So that sounds good.
If anyone has any questions for either Norm or Steve, and I think Andrew is also on the Zoom with us. So if you have any questions about Phonograph Creek or the area, feel free to let us have them. And I was really struck until someone else feels like breaking in, but I was really struck by almost a holy feeling to it. That the arched shapes, the inside of that barn, when you painted through that
Definitely.
door,
Yeah.
that's just a stunning, stunning image.
It's the place, I had a strong reaction to how dark it was. I prefer it light. And it had an effect on me. It really did. As I said earlier, though, it's changed a lot since Norman and I were there. They've done a lot of work up there and a lot of hard work, and they've brightened things up and thinned brush out, and it's changed some. But because of the time that had elapsed between their leaving and then us being there, for example, it was pretty dark. But there is definitely there's a feel to the place for sure. It's good. I found this stick, and it had a piece of felt. She handmade felt.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
She was beautiful.
and she had this wrapped around the stick, and I used it for my maul stick for painting. So I got to carry that little bit of her around the place. It sounds corny, but it felt good. It was good. They are everywhere there. Their presence is everywhere.
So it looks like we've got a question about how to apply for a residency. Andrew, do you want to take that?
Sure. I'll just add one little bit on the shape of the door on the barn. Eric had those shapes all over the property, and what that was a curved log that he found on the beach that he cut into lumber and made that threshold and the framing out of that. So there's so many pieces in a place where he needed a shape for the building, and he found a log that had that shape and then formed it out of there. So that's why the place really feels like it just kind of came up out of the earth there. It really blends in with the natural environment because he used the shapes of the wood and the logs to build it. Some of the beams that hold up the floor joists on the second floor are trees that he cut in full logs, and he left the branch crotch of the tree and then set the beams across there and use natural shapes like that. So it's like you can imagine what they did is when you go out beachcombing here on the Tongass and you pick up shells or a nice stick or a nice rock, they did that, but using the materials to build a whole house and a whole homestead out of that. And, you know, just really, really connected, and you really feel the place there and everything that he did. And as I think it was Norm that said, or Steve that said, you know, he did his art as his wood engraving, but really the property and everything that they built there and the way they lived there was a work of art in itself. Question on how do you do a residency there, and how do you apply? You know, we're really figuring out as we're doing this what this is going to look like up there. It's a difficult place to be. It's remote. You have to take a float plane or a boat to get there, and the boat trip it's not like even just going over to cruise off. It's a pretty immense boat trip up there through some dangerous country, and we're figuring out, you know, how do we get people up there to use it? How do we support them when we're there? How do we pay the costs of having people there, and how do we pay for keeping the property up? We've had some generous donations that have helped us sponsor some of the artists that have gone up there, like Norm and Steve. And so I think that, you know, this winter I'm back to work on figuring out, you know, after the field season and getting people up there, how to make it work. And we're still figuring that out. So I guess stay tuned with Sitka Conservation Society and look at the things and get in touch with me if you're interested in helping get artists up there, or going up there yourself, and we can figure out how to make it happen, move forward, because that's kind of the stage that we're at right now.
Bethany and Leon, you can go ahead.
Hello, Bethany and Leon here with the Sitka Conservation Society. We've been cleaning a deer during the talk. So we're in the basement, so it looks a little dark where we're at. Not a question, more so just a reflection. And I spent a little bit of time at the Phonograph Creek property and just wanted to say thank you for your work. I hadn't seen any pictures of the actual artwork, but had heard about your journey there and was really blown away by what you guys were able to produce and how you were able to tap into the really special energy there and create some really incredible pieces of work. I look forward to checking out on Friday, and I really enjoyed the presentation. And yeah, really well done, blown away. Thanks for participating.
Thank you.
Well, thank Leon for making cookies and bread when she was there too.
Yeah, I was there when North TV weathered in for a couple days, and yeah, it was really great to see them show their art and then see the process now that they've been back in Sitka and the finished work, and also get to know them and spend some time up there in the space. Yes, using the cast iron stoves to bake a lot of things.
Well done, thanks guys.
Any other questions?
Anybody else?
I would just like, if no one else is on, to have Andrew maybe mention who the other artists that have been up there, because it's been a really varied group of people who have been able to take advantage of it so far. Andrew, could you give us a little information about who else has been there?
Yeah, I can tell you a little bit about that. Let's see. Let me rack my brains here and figure it out. We had a group of activists who were up there. Let's see, not this past summer, but the summer before. An artist named Bronte Velez went up there with some people that she works with. I don't have all the names here at hand. I've got them on a sheet and a calendar. So Bronte is the name that she's the leader of that group that went up there and brought some people together, and they were there and then got on a pair of sailboats and went around Chichagof Island. But I think they spent about 6 days on the property, and they did some work with movement and music and dance and video. And so got a feel for the place, and Jordy was her partner. He plays the cello, and I think he makes musical instruments and made his own cello. And so they were experimenting with the feel and the movement in the place, and their own movements and sound and what the wilderness told them. And they did some activism also around the roadless rule and protecting the temperate rainforest on the Tongass. So they were there last year. This year we had a young man named Julian Brave Noisecat, who is a policymaker who works in Washington, D.C., He's a person who works with Democratic Party and progressive wing of the party in writing up policy. I think he helped to write and draft a lot of the elements of the Green New Deal, and he was responsible for the nomination of Secretary of the Interior, our first Native American Secretary of the Interior this year. And so he works in Washington, D.C., and of course, that's a pretty hectic world. So he wanted to have a place where he could get away from things and kind of slow down and think and do his writing. So we provided the property for him to do that and introduced him to the Tongass and worked on our issues and policy together. Ruth Miller is a Native American climate activist, and she spent a week there this summer doing a little bit of the same. She works on activism and advocacy and is working on climate policy. So she took a bit up there and just kind of reconnected with the land and got out of her hectic space. Maureen O'Hanlon, she was up there. She's an architect here in Sitka that kind of pursued her own pathway in life. And the property didn't have hot water. And so one of Maite Lorente's ideas, my partner, was that rather than put in a hot water system, a hot water heater, let's have a sauna. And so Maureen used salvage, yellow and red cedar, and some of the wood, the urban renewal wood, the urban removal wood that Ernie Eggleston mills up. And she made a nice sauna up there. So now we've got a sauna there for bathing and hot water. And that structure really added to the property, made it comfortable for people to be there. We had some people that have gone up there and have helped us kind of get the property in conditions where others can go up there and be there. You know, the Bealers had it in their spot and they were, you know, there of having it, you know, is set for them in their life and their lifestyle, but for having other people in there, we needed to kind of improve it and make it a little bit more user-friendly and comfortable and trim some of the trees and do some landscaping. So there's a long list of people who were up there that helped with that. Tristan Rhodes, Jenny Goddard, Trevor Barnes, Coulter, I forgot his last name. Yeah, wish I knew this question. I'd have the whole list of people, but there's a sample of some of the people who were up there. I'm missing a bunch. We've had about 23 people through that were either doing art or writing or retreating from their space or working on the property and helping us get it to a place where it was in good condition and we can use it and bring people up there. There's a lot of work to do. We put a solar system up there this past year, so we have enough energy to have good lighting in the place, to charge up camera batteries or computers and work on laptops and have the electronics that we need. You know, it's still pretty much a wilderness cabin, but you know, making it a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more user-friendly, and make sure it's safe for anybody to go there, because there are a lot of bears there. It's remote. It's 20 miles away from Pelican, and Pelican is remote. So you're way out there. It's wilderness in front and Lud 2, which is another type of wilderness designation in back. So you are out in the West Chichagof Wilderness area. It looked like Allison had a question.
Hi. So I've obviously seen Steve's artwork before tonight, but it was really nice to see both of you guys like together, because I feel like you're really representing kind of like a dichotomy between your experiences, and you kind of addressed it, but I was wondering if you could kind of go into depth about like kind of how you felt in the space and like trying to like be creative in that area when just considering like the feeling that you got when you were there.
Hi, Allison. Well, I worked outside most all of the time. Well, the nice days, and Norm did too. Some outside work too. You saw that earlier. And then when it was raining, for example, that's when I went into the boat shed. And it was, and of course, it, you know, it usually blows with it too. And then in the barn. As for how it felt, I was more comfortable, I guess, being outside working. It would have, had the weather held up, I probably would have done everything from the outside. It's a reflective place for sure. It's very reflective. It's quite a different feeling being there. As I mentioned with the meadows, southeast as we know it around here in Sitka, and you go to a cabin and you got the beach out in front, maybe there's an estuary a little bit, but that place is different in how it has those big meadows. They stretch from the Beeler property up to Jim Slater's place and kind of taper out up there, which is a pretty large expanse of flat open land, which allowed them to have their animals there, of course. They had somewhere to graze. I'll let Norm talk now, Alison. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
And I tried to touch on it earlier in just talking about how you could not remove Eric and Pam from the property for at least for me, and I think for you as well.
I agree.
And so it's not just the physical part of the property as well as their spirit or their perceived spirit, what we picked up from them. So I think if somebody went up there to work and had no connection with Pam and Eric, they have a really different experience. But I think we spent a couple days pondering the whole situation and what happened and why you would do something like that. So, but that was valuable to me. You know, it gave the work a new base.
That's right. No, I think Norm put it well there. Their presence is everywhere, but that's because of who we are. Norman is and I am. We're familiar with them. We knew them, and somebody coming from Massachusetts or LA or some wherever they're coming from, Hawaii. They're going to have a whole different experience. A whole completely different experience. That they'll know the underlying story, I should imagine, of the homestead. Well, the one last comment I'd make, Alison, is living in this life and you try to get things done every day. We all try to do our best. Those guys got a lot of stuff done up there. They still managed to make artwork and have a cultural life, and pretty amazing. I mean, their food, they had to deal with their food and a lot of challenges, This city life we have going on here, pretty easy. Anyway.
And spent a lot of time gathering and preparing and storing food. There's no refrigeration there, so there was a root cellar of sorts, and so things had to be prepared in a way to make them last. So, you put all that together, and it becomes more incredible that you're doing this phenomenal work. So.
But it also seems like the life that most all of us live now, we are distracted so much. There are things going on and we do them. They were there, they lived there and spent all of their time there. And, so you're able to just be focused. Whereas I know you two are pretty focused on your artwork, but some of the rest of us end up doing other things when we want to be doing artwork.
It is interesting though. You bring up a good point though, Pat. When they did get the ability to have internet at the house, it caught on. Pam used it. Pam was interested. She used it. So it's. But But you're right, the distractions that we deal with, it's incredible. And so that place is I think Andrew used the word retreat a number of times. It's a place to retreat to for sure. It's good.
So I know we are at time.
Okay.
We're at time, but I think Lisa left us with a really good question to close out. She says, what do you feel influenced your work the most from the experience, and did it change your work in any way? So if you just want to wrap up with that.
Well, I think the physical beauty was the thing that that moved me the most. The trees and their structure and the mountains across the inlet. So just that being immersed in that physical surrounding in a way that you can't quite be when you're in a studio.
You know, one thing that has struck me about that visit was I painted buildings, and I don't usually do that. And I mostly paint people or organic shapes, if you like, people. And I discovered I'm not at all afraid of painting. You know, I could go around and paint buildings, it's fine. So that's kind of a gift. I consider that a gift. I discovered I'm not afraid of that. So I hope that answers the question somewhat.
Good, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you both so much. Thanks for sharing this. I'd give a lot to be able to spend some time up there and have that peace and quiet and beauty. And thanks to the Sitka Conservation Society for making Phonograph Creek a reality for people to experience.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Andrew, you got anything else to close out?
Yeah, I just say thanks everybody for the support and for being here tonight. Our annual report and calendar is just finished and we just got it. We're distributing those on Sunday at the Beak for those in Sitka, and for everybody else who's members, they'll be coming in the mail. And if you're not, join as a member and we'll send you one. There's a bunch of stories from some of the artists and change makers in residency that we had on there in the calendar with some stories and reflections. So can compare some of what they found there with what Norm and Steve told us about it. And there's some more images in there. So thanks everybody for the support and for being part of this. And we hope we have more art and more to share coming out of this property here in the future. So thanks for hosting to the Island Artist Gallery and giving this space for us being able to showcase the place and the artwork.